Have you ever felt the weight of the world on your shoulders? That constant feeling that you need to do more, be more, have more? We live in an age of incessant noise. Notifications that flash, infinite feeds showing us perfectly curated lives, and an invisible pressure to always be productive, always connected, always one step ahead. But what if true wisdom isn't in adding but in subtracting? The Stoic philosopher Seneca, nearly 2,000 years ago, wrote a truth that resonates with stunning force in our time. We suffer more in imagination than in reality. We drown ourselves in anxieties about the future and regrets about the past. We create catastrophic scenarios in our minds, paralyzed by fears that, most of the time, never materialize. This is where the pursuit of a simple life reveals itself not as an escape, but as an act of courage. A simple life doesn't mean a life of deprivation or lack of ambition. It means a life of clarity. It means silencing the external noise to finally hear the voice of your own inner wisdom. It's about focusing on what is essential, on what is within our control, and finding a deep peace in that process. If you're looking for more emotional balance, clarity in your decisions, and want to learn how to better handle life, this content is for you. Today we will embark on a journey to uncover why the simple life is, in fact, the wisest. We'll explore how to disarm the traps of our own minds and build an inner fortress of calm and resilience. So go ahead and hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, because with each video, you will strengthen yourself from within and see life with more wisdom. Part 1. The Diagnosis: Why We Complicate Our Lives. 1. Identifying patterns of self-sabotage, the enemy within. Sometimes I find myself reflecting on how I am my own worst enemy. Self-sabotage is a curious phenomenon, isn't it? It's as if, in moments of potential and opportunity, I find a way to bring myself down. I remember a situation where, about to present a project I had worked on for months, my brain started to sabotage me. I thought of all the mistakes I could make, the criticism I might receive. And in that whirlwind of thoughts, I ended up not delivering my best. This made me realize that recognizing these patterns is the first step to overcoming them. Identifying these patterns is not an easy task. Often they are so ingrained in our routine that we don't even notice we are boycotting ourselves. Over time, I noticed that some situations make me more prone to this self-sabotage. When I'm under pressure, when I have to deal with change, or when I feel insecure. It's as if, instead of facing the challenge, I look for an easier way out, which deep down only brings me frustration. Keeping a reflection journal has been a great help in this process. Writing down the moments I sabotaged myself and the emotions I was feeling gave me clarity about these patterns. Procrastinating on that important course, avoiding a difficult conversation, accepting less than I deserve. All of these are subtle manifestations of the same internal enemy. It operates in the shadows, fueled by the fear of the unknown and the perverse comfort of stagnation. The simple life invites us to bring this enemy into the light. By naming it and observing its movements without judgment, we take away its power. 2. Recognizing limiting beliefs, the invisible chains. Limiting beliefs are like invisible chains that bind us and prevent us from reaching our full potential. I always wondered where these voices came from, the ones that told me I wasn't capable. I remember a time when, preparing for a new job opportunity, my mind started echoing phrases like, "You're not good enough," or "You won't make it." It was then I realized that these beliefs were not the truth about me, but rather constructs I had internalized over the years. Recognizing these beliefs was a revealing process. Often they are formed in childhood based on experiences and feedback we receive. A criticism received at school, a comparison made by a family member, a failure we interpreted as final. These moments plant seeds that, if left unchallenged, grow into robust trees of doubt. This vicious cycle fuels self-sabotage because if I believe I am not capable, I will inevitably not try. The first time I put this on paper, writing down the beliefs that limited me, I'm not creative, money is hard to come by, I don't deserve a healthy relationship, was a moment of clarity. By visualizing these ideas, I could begin to challenge them, to treat them as hypotheses, not facts. Stoic philosophy teaches us to examine our impressions. A belief is just that, an impression. We have the power to assent to it or to reject it. The simple life begins when we stop uncritically accepting the chains we've placed on ourselves. Part 2. The Stoic Toolkit: Building a Wise Mind. 3. The Importance of Self-Knowledge, the Map to Freedom. In my journey of self-discovery, I realized that self-knowledge is the foundation for any personal transformation. In the beginning, I didn't quite understand what it meant. I thought knowing myself was just about knowing my preferences or hobbies. However, as I delved deeper, I understood it involves much more. It's a continuous process of inner exploration, the Stoic practice of looking inward. One of the first steps I took was to reflect on my emotions and reactions. I started paying attention to how I felt in different situations and, more importantly, why I felt that way. What triggers my anger? What activates my anxiety? What brings me genuine peace? This practice of self-analysis allowed me to identify behavioral patterns that had previously gone unnoticed. Each discovery was like a piece of a puzzle that, when joined together, formed a clearer picture of who I truly am. Furthermore, self-knowledge helped me to recognize my strengths and weaknesses with honesty and without self-flagellation. I began to understand in which areas I excelled and where I needed improvement. This awareness was crucial for setting realistic and value-aligned goals. Instead of comparing myself to others, an infinite source of dissatisfaction, I started focusing on my personal growth. Self-knowledge is the compass that guides us to a simpler life, because when we know who we are and what we want, we stop running in directions that are not our own. We stop seeking external validation because we find a center of gravity within ourselves. For self-assessment and personal reflection, the dialogue with oneself. Self-assessment is a powerful tool we often neglect. I used to go through life on autopilot, reacting to events without stopping to reflect on my actions and decisions. But over time, I realized that this practice of looking inward helped me understand not only who I am, but also what I truly want. I started setting aside a weekly time to reflect, inspired by the writings of Marcus Aurelius, who dialogued with himself in his journal. This practice of self-assessment became a sacred moment for me, a space where I can be completely honest. One of the most revealing aspects of self-assessment is the ability to identify what's working and what's not. By reviewing my goals and actions, I realized I was often straying from what truly mattered, spending my precious energy on trivialities. For example, I used to get involved in projects that brought me no satisfaction, just because I thought they were others' expectations. This awareness led me to make decisions more aligned with my values. Now, when I feel I'm losing focus, I return to this practice of assessment as a guide. Questions like, is this making me a better person? Does this activity serve my higher purpose? Help simplify my choices and eliminate the superfluous. Life becomes lighter when we stop carrying weights that do not belong to us. 5. How to deal with the fear of failure. The obstacle is the way. The fear of failure? Who hasn't felt it? It used to be one of my greatest enemies, always whispering in my ear that I wasn't good enough, that my effort would be in vain. The truth is, for a long time, I let this fear paralyze me. The fear of failure is the root of much of our self-sabotage. We don't try because we imagine the pain of the fall. The first change was to understand, through the Stoic lens, that failure is actually a natural and essential part of the learning process. The Stoics teach us to differentiate what is within our control, our efforts, our intentions, our reactions, from what is not, the final outcome, the opinions of others. Failure is an external outcome. It is not under our control. What is under our control is how we respond to it. By adopting this perspective, I began to see mistakes not as a verdict on my worth, but as data, as feedback. Each failure became an opportunity to adjust my course, to learn and to grow stronger. The phrase, "the obstacle is the way," became a mantra. The fear didn't disappear, but I changed my relationship with it. Instead of running from it, I invited along for the journey, knowing it's just a passenger, not the driver. The simple life flourishes when we accept that perfection is an illusion and that growth happens in the arena, not in the stands. 6. Developing self-confidence. Building the inner fortress. Developing self-confidence is one of the most rewarding journeys I have ever undertaken. I used to think that confidence was a personality trait, something you either have or you don't. But Stoic wisdom taught me that self-confidence is not a feeling, it's a practice. It is the result of living in accordance with your values and keeping the promises you make to yourself. A technique that helped me immensely was to expose myself to small, deliberate challenges, situations that made me uncomfortable. I started small. A difficult conversation I had been putting off. Waking up 15 minutes earlier. Making that sales call. Each time I faced a small fear and kept my word, I deposited a coin in the vault of my self-confidence. Confidence doesn't come from grand, heroic victories, but from the accumulation of small, daily proofs that you are someone you can count on. Furthermore, I started to surround myself with people who supported and encouraged me. The environment we are in has a profound impact on how we see ourselves. The Stoics advise choosing our company wisely, as we become the average of those we spend the most time with. By connecting with people who believed in me, I was able to internalize that energy. Confidence became a virtuous cycle. The more I acted with integrity and courage, the more I believed in myself, and the more I attracted people who reflected that belief. The simple life becomes possible when you no longer need external approval, because you have built a fortress of self-confidence, brick by brick. 7. Mindset shift, from I can't to I can try. One of the biggest obstacles I faced was the scarcity mindset I carried with me. Whenever a challenge arose, my mind's first reaction was to sound the alarm. I can't do this, it's too hard, I'm going to fail. This limiting belief was the lock that kept me trapped in a cycle of self-sabotage. However, when I encountered the idea that this voice was not the truth, but just a mental habit, a new world opened up before me. The change began when I consciously decided to replace I can't with a more humble and powerful phrase, I can try. This simple word swap had a profound impact. I can't is a final sentence, a wall. I can try is a door open to possibility, to action. It acknowledges the challenge but focuses on the effort, which is the only thing we truly control. A clear example of this shift occurred when I decided to learn a new skill I had always deemed too complex for me. In the past, the I can't voice would have defeated me before I even started. But with the new mindset, I told myself, I can try. I can dedicate 30 minutes a day to this. And by allowing myself to experiment, to make mistakes, and to learn, I realized that the process was more valuable than the outcome. Life simplifies enormously when we stop defining ourselves by outcomes we don't control and start taking pride in the efforts we make. This shift in focus from the outcome to the process is the heart of Stoic wisdom and the key to lasting peace. Part 3. The Daily Practice, Living Simple Wisdom. 8. Mindfulness and meditation practices, the anchor in the present. When I first delved into mindfulness and meditation practices, I confess I didn't have much faith. To me, it seemed somewhat esoteric, a passing trend that didn't fit into my hectic routine. But over time, I realized that these practices are, in fact, the most practical and essential training for a Stoic mind. They are powerful tools to connect us with the only moment that truly exists, the now. The first step was to find a time of day when I could stop and simply breathe. I started with just 5 minutes. Sitting in a quiet place, I would close my eyes and focus on my breath. In the beginning, it was a battle. My mind was a storm of thoughts, to-do lists, worries. But the instruction wasn't to fight the storm, but to observe it. I learned to accept these thoughts, to see them as clouds passing in the sky of my consciousness, and to gently return my attention to the anchor of my breath. Over time, I realized that mindfulness was not limited to formal meditation. It was a way of being present in every moment. When washing dishes, feeling the water temperature and the smell of the soap. When walking, feeling the contact of my feet on the ground. This mindfulness radically simplifies life. It pulls us out of the labyrinth of rumination about the past and anxiety about the future, and anchors us in the reality of the present. It is in this space of presence that we find the clarity and calm to make wise decisions. 9. Time management techniques, the wise use of life. When it came to time management, I used to be a real disaster. I would get lost in tasks, procrastinate, and at the end of the day the to-do list seemed longer, creating a weight on my chest. It was then I realized that the Stoics saw time as our most precious and non-renewable asset. Managing time wasn't about productivity, but about living wisely. I started using the Eisenhower matrix, which divides activities into urgent and important, important but not urgent, urgent but not important, and neither urgent nor important. The revelation was that I was spending most of my time in the urgent quadrant, reacting to fires, and neglecting the most crucial quadrant for a meaningful life, the important but not urgent. This is where planning, learning, healthcare, and relationship building reside. The simple and wise life is lived predominantly in this quadrant. Time blocking also became an ally. I reserved specific periods for focused work, turning off all distractions. I created an environment conducive to concentration. I discovered that 45 minutes of focused work was worth more than 3 hours of interrupted work. But most importantly, I learned to say no. Saying no to projects that didn't align with my values, no to distractions, no to commitments that drained my energy. Every no was a yes to what truly mattered. Managing time, in the end, is managing life. It is choosing deliberately where to invest each irreplaceable moment. 10. Building a positive environment and support networks. Stoic wisdom teaches us to focus on what we can control, but it also recognizes the profound influence of our environment. Building a positive environment is not just about decorating a space, but about consciously curating what and who we allow into our lives. Have you ever stopped to think about how the people we spend time with influence our energy? That's why I began to actively seek the company of those who inspire me, who challenge me to be better, who resonate with a constructive worldview. Social support is one of the most essential pillars. I realized we can't do everything alone. Building a solid support network, friends, mentors, a community, is an act of wisdom, not weakness. I remember a time when I avoided talking about my problems. By opening up, I discovered that vulnerability creates connection. The exchange not only strengthened our bonds but also encouraged us to seek solutions together. This principle extends to our digital environment. I started a cleanup of my social media, unfollowing accounts that promoted comparison, negativity, and anger, and started following profiles that offered knowledge, inspiration, and beauty. The internet can be a sewer or a library, the choice is ours. Creating a positive environment, physical, social, and digital, simplifies life. It reduces drama, negativity, and noise, creating a fertile space for our inner peace to flourish. 11. Self-care and well-being practices, maintaining the temple. Talking about self-care is, above all, a matter of priority. For a long time, I neglected this part of my life, treating it as a luxury to be enjoyed only when I had time, which of course never happened. The Stoic mindset gave me a new perspective. Our body and mind are the only tools we have to navigate life. Taking care of them is not selfishness, it is a duty. It is the maintenance of our temple. One of my favorite self-care practices became physical activity. Not as a punishment but as a celebration of what my body can do. Walks in nature, feeling the fresh air and the sun on my skin, became a form of moving meditation. My diet also transformed. It stopped being about restriction and became about nourishment. Asking what does my body need today, instead of what does my anxiety want to eat. Dedicating time to rest and silence is also essential. We live in a world that glorifies being busy. I learned to value leisure, unscheduled time, where the mind can wander and recover. Reading a book for pleasure, listening to music without doing anything else, or simply sitting in silence for a few minutes. These small breaks are investments. Self-care simplifies life because a rested body and a clear mind handle challenges much more effectively. We stop operating in survival mode and start living with intention and vitality. 12. Visualization and positive affirmations, programming the wise mind. Visualization is a powerful technique I discovered on my journey. The Stoics practiced premeditatio malorum, negative visualization, imagining the worst-case scenarios to prepare themselves and appreciate the present. But the same tool can be used positively. I began to visualize not just my goals, but the person I wanted to become to achieve them. I imagined myself acting calmly under pressure, with courage in the face of fear, with compassion in the face of failure. This practice creates a neural map, a mental rehearsal that makes the real action easier when the time comes. Positive affirmations also play a key role. At first, I was skeptical. But I realized that affirmations are not about lying to yourself. They are about deliberately choosing what to focus on. Instead of letting my mind automatically repeat old limiting beliefs, I started introducing new ones. Phrases like, I choose to respond calmly, I am capable of handling today's challenges, I focus on what I can control. Repeating these phrases, especially in the morning, works like setting the compass for the day. They don't change external reality but they change the lens through which I perceive it. And as the Stoics teach us, our perception is our reality.